So just a quick overview of what the content tree is for. It is a way to manage content, kind of like a file system. This is present in some other CMSs. The like just immediate goal is to be able to manage your content kind of like you would a file system. Whereas right now, as we see it, it's a list. Any content item, you just see a specific type listed out. Whereas this would allow you to organize it more in a file structure. And additionally, there are stretch goals to maybe even modify how the renderer works so that you can kind of have child content rendered within kind of the equivalent of like placeholder views. But that again is like way down the road. Really, the primary goal here is being able to create content from this page, just manage it all in one place. And as you like click through these, you can just go right to the edit page, looking at how you've structured it. I know that we have taxonomies in Orchard Core. However, I just didn't really see a way to tie those in to hierarchically structure them and reorganize, because at that point you have one taxonomy per page at that point. And also I wanted to tie this into the index so that we can have more performant loading of groups of pages for that down the road kind of rendering long stretch goal. This is a demo, like a lot of this is mocked up. Really, this just selecting the pages and rendering it out is the only real functionality. I've still been working on trying to figure out how to reuse the edit page so that we can edit pages from the old existing edit template or a view that's available to us. However, I don't know if that's possible because it kind of depends on the whole page server-side rendering to load, so I just haven't found a way to do that as a partial. And kind of an aside, if anyone takes any interest in this project, I would love some input as just kind of how to structure it, just to consult, and maybe eventually put this into the contrib branch if that's desired. I will dig into the backend now just briefly and just go over how we index it. So I added an indexer. It's basically the same as the existing content item index, and I have a to-do kind of noting in here. It'd be ideal if we could just update the existing indexer, but my knowledge of SQL is so primitive, I'm not sure whether that's a reasonable ask. But the primary goal of having it in the indexer is we have these cache paths and we can efficiently query and load hierarchical data without having to do a full SQL request, something that's going to be a little bit quicker. Let's see. The parent part is very simple. It's the primary component that allows us to enable hierarchy on a given content type. Just has a reference to what is its parent. It keeps track of its cache path and also the position within amongst those other siblings. So every time that you change the parent or add a new child under a parent, this position would get reevaluated just so that we can render that content in a specific order so that these children are in a certain order. Right now, there's nothing too sophisticated on that, and you can't really modify it, but eventually you'll be able to drag and drop and move these around and order it as you would a file system. And then I guess the last thing to go over is just how the feature is implemented. It's just a very simple, it's either enabled or it is not. Let's see, should be down under here. So content tree, enable it from here. There's no additional configuration on the module itself. Once you've enabled it, you go into your content type that you want to add it to. Right now we have it on page. So you just add a parent content type. Right now you do have to go into it and just make sure it's set to show so that the field shows up. This is not the primary place that you would set the parent, but it's just a way to currently test this. Parent would be primarily set through this hierarchy page where you can move things around and change what the parents would be. But just for testing right now, there is a drop down to change what the parent is. I think that's the bulk of it. Any questions, thoughts, concerns?
Just some thoughts. For the grouping, where you have a child and parent,
The grouping at which part?
lost my mic, you are muted, or unmuted again. I see you unmute and then mute. Unmuted.
Someone is messing with me. Somebody doesn't want me to talk.
Not me.
So I think the parent and the child, I don't know, whatever you guys heard, I have no idea, but like page 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, those are children under page 3. And so, I mean, you might be able to utilize the list part in this case to just regroup them in a way without having to reinvent the wheel. Maybe you can choose a specific editor, but this isn't, you know, it looks like a list part. And then also on the rendering part, you might be able to utilize the sidebar placement or a content, placement, but placeholder zone is that the word. So if you use the sidebar zone, there is I don't think anybody use it. It goes on the right side, so you'll have the menu on the right side. You could potentially, make a change or you could shift to the left side, but
Everybody wants to use it. Oh, sorry, everybody wants you not to use it.
Yeah, so that's another thing that you could utilize here.
Okay, that's interesting. I'm just curious, and if we want to talk further on this, because I know we may have limited time in the meeting, but I'd love to pick your brain on kind of what that would look like in a larger scope for the rendering, whether that list part does the same thing, like as far as indexing as well. I imagine it would, but yeah, that seems very interesting. I'd like to explore that.
It does try it. It has also sorting and
But you
ordering.
don't want it. Here, I assume the goal of this thing is to organize your content, not to render the sub items when you click on one item. Right?
Yeah, right now the early goal is to just structure.
Yes.
And eventually maybe render.
Then that's the list. If it's render, it's the list. And you have one item that is a list of other items. But in the content tree, this list might appear anywhere as a sub item, as a parent item, or whatever. For me, the content hierarchy is just organizing things logically between each other. Like I could have, I don't know, a news page, and then under I might have some different kind of news, but they are not in the same page as the news page. They are different pages. It's just that they are organized in like, oh, there is a main news page and sub news page, but when I click on the news page, I don't see the sub news page. It's another page that shows me the sub news page. I don't. Maybe that's what.
And that could have implications for the URL route as well if it's auto-generated. Perhaps if you have I know there's already a blogs component, but just to kind of illustrate the idea, you might have two different blogs, and you may put an article underneath one of them, and then you move that to, say you have blog A and blog B, and those have their own route. If you move one of those blog content items to a different overall blog, then it would change that route that goes to it. But that could be, for any number of things, so that you can structure your URLs relative to their parents.
But I could see that someone doesn't want that, because if they just use the hierarchy to organize their content, not their URLs, then they will say, hey, why did you change my URL now? People can't find my old page because I moved it in a different section, like not interesting things. I don't know.
The way that Kaneko handled that, it would allow the new generated route to work, but it would create what are called aliases. So you could have multiple routes to the same piece of content. So the old route would still work. But I'm not sure if I'd want to bring that functionality over, because I mean that in its own thing is just a completely new paradigm that may or may not, be desired in Orchard Core.
That can be part of these hierarchy things. Like when you move stuff, it says, oh, I record the old URL, so it still works, but the new official one is the new one. Again, depends on what that hierarchy means for you. Does it show the site, the pages hierarchy, like in terms of URLs, organization of content, or if it's just like in OneNote? I know in OneNote I use sections and subsections, pages. It's just to organize the concepts, not.
Mm.
Yeah, you mentioned stuff here like what's an indexer?
Oh, so I know that the way that we fetch content in Orchard Core, and again, I built this on a weekend like
Index.
months ago, so my my memory of how all of this came together is a bit fuzzy. But I know that the content item index is involved
Okay,
in the
so
service for
okay, yeah.
fetching content. So I just want to make sure that when we fetched children of a parent item, that it had some kind of index, so that it would be a performant query.
Yeah, sure. But then if you say that you store some parent things like this, and that the item itself knows about it, I don't know. Maybe that's, yeah, maybe you could have index for that. It depends on your part. And then you mentioned that you made a part. And,
yes, parent part.
And Mike mentioned that also, which is we have parts like this already, like the parent relationship. There is a part like this. There is something called the list part, which says I own children, and you can have children owning other children.
Contained part.
And then we have the contain part, which defines the child to parent relationship, like which is what you just made here. So contained part in Orchard is something that has an order and a list content item ID, meaning what's the parent, but for us, it's a list.
And that's music to my ears, because if I don't have to maintain this parent part, that's fantastic.
Yes and no, but maybe it's different because the list, what we made for list is a block. Like it's really a content item that owns others, which looks like what you did. Like you can't have one content item under two parents, right? And that's what we did with list and contain. But we also just show list and provide editors for lists for a single level. Like, so when you would then click, we don't display a tree, but that could be done this way, right? We could also have a custom view that says, oh, you can display list, and if the child is a list, then render a tree in the end, right, Mike? There is nothing that prevents us from having a view like this. But also,
I don't know if this would change things too much, but any parent part can belong to any content item, so you can have any content type.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
Content type.
Yeah, so the list is really as a type, so.
And siblings could be mixed types as well.
So you want a different thing. Yeah, that is more logical and not as constrained as a list. Which is fine too. Like sometimes you want constrained things and sometimes you want free things. Okay.
And you also might be able to utilize like a content picker, where you can just point one to a child and.
I was thinking about a hierarchy picker because when you are in a content item, any content item, you might want to say, move this content item to this hierarchy. And where in the hierarchy, right? Because at the beginning, unless you say everything is in the hierarchy, and then it's just at the root level by default, and then you can move it around. If you don't have this logic that everything is in the hierarchy, then you need to be able to attach the content item to the hierarchy and use the content picker. Or to use the hierarchy picker, I would say in this case, to add it to a hierarchy. Or maybe you want two hierarchies, right? Like one showing this kind of maybe that's a content type, like a hierarchy. And then you can attach things to hierarchies and then move them around. And maybe the same content item in two different hierarchies, but then the URL, I don't know, maybe it will have two URLs. Fine. I don't know.
I struggled with that part because Keniko, you can only have one hierarchy root. So I really like the idea of being able to have multiple roots since it's not tightly coupled with the concept of the root level of the front-facing part of the website. So in a perfect world, I think it'd be nice to maintain the multiple roots behavior.
Yeah, so this could be a different part. unless we have that, but like to store the different routes. Because an item has one route, the canonical URL, but then we might have others that match the same content item probably. Okay. About the placement of the hierarchy, yes, like Mike, I don't think it should go on the left there. I don't think it should go on the right either. I would rather see it on the left, like where you put your hierarchy icon under content or hierarchy here and see dynamically this thing appear. And that's what Bertrand did, right, in Orchard One with the content tree. It's called the content tree module in Orchard One. So maybe you should also look into how it's done in Orchard One. There was for sure a demo online. So if I will ask the people with memory like Gabor or Antoine if they remember, or maybe you can search that what meeting was presented, but there was a demo about the content tree in Orchard One, which is exactly what you're doing.
You also have to be careful if you do that. That's gonna get hit every single request, and imagine the content items being loaded every single request.
Yes and no. Yes and no.
I'm not saying not to do it. I'm just saying just be careful doing it because you don't want to sacrifice performance.
Yeah, we had the same issue in Orchard One, but I think Bertrand did that like dynamically. So level by level so it will not, or there can be also caching or whatever.
Yep.
But
this one does not load the children until you actually ask it to. It's dynamic.
Another solution, Mike, is like the hierarchy on the top left. When you click, then you get a page here, like it's done here, to display the hierarchy. But just that, the same way we have the list part, right? So when we go to the blog page, then we see the list of blogs and blog posts. So the same way here, you could say you could have the hierarchy be a content item, and when you click on it, you see on this page a tree of the things. And then when you click on the item, then you get to the editor. And it's not like you always see the hierarchy somewhere. That's why you want the sidebar, I see, Mike, because you want to be able to navigate, to browse live. It's hard. Or maybe it should be a sliding pane on the right or somewhere. But
I do like the idea of kind of hiding this part, because the idea, one of the central concepts here is that maybe as a content manager, you may not care about any of the other parts of this site. You really just want to create your pages, make them related to each other, and just update content. And this is 90% of what you'll ever do in Orchard Core as a content manager. And so just kind of having this as like, I don't want to say a one-stop shop, but the central area where you manage content would be kind of an ideal purpose for it.
Like the content items page right now that we have. But
yes, be kind of like this, but you have a, like when you're trying to edit, you're navigating, you don't have the context of the other content items, which may not be relevant. It's not something that it's just another way of approaching it. Because I mean, this works, it's functional. It's just for people that came from, say Kaneko in my case, just having everything kind of available to you in relational is just a very familiar way of approaching it. And I think there's a way to apply this without stepping too far outside of the paradigm that Orchard Core presents. But I do agree with you, like having this collapsed and this is like the primary sidebar would be very, very nice.
Or you just do a page showing the hierarchy, like the content items page. And that would be an easy thing to do first for a first step. And then when you exactly like the content items page, it's just displayed as a hierarchy and there's no paging, it's just dynamically loaded. That would work. That would be super easy to implement and provide the first stopgap to have the feature. And don't change the editors to behave differently first. Cool.
There's a lot of great ideas. I appreciate everyone's feedback. And I may be reaching out to some of you all again just because I have not been taking notes this whole time, and I kind of wish I had. So I'm looking forward to and kind of excited to extending this with these recommendations. So thank you, everyone.